Cole Bacani, it's a pleasure to have you here on the Kicking the Seat YouTube channel and podcast. Kind of strange circumstances under which we're talking. Your aunt actually turned me on to the fact that you had written and directed a short film, which is going to be premiering here in Chicago at the Gene Siskel Film Center this weekend. Now,
Yep.
your aunt and I, we go way back. We are actually friends in grade school.
Oh, wow.
And through the miracles of the internet, we reconnected several years later. So this is quite a thrill. Um,
Wow.
so tell me about this film, Everything Stays. I watched it earlier this morning, probably way earlier than I should, because I was coming out of the fog of sleep. I think I was extra emotional, and I was a weeping basket case by the
Oh
end of it.
man, sorry to do that to you. And it's actually funny because Vimeo notifies you when like private links are open. So I saw that it was opened at 2:30 a.m. my time, which is probably like a little before 5 a.m. your time.
Yeah, I wish I could say that's an anomaly, but I'm a vampire.
Nice. Me too
So
sometimes. Um, but yeah, well, first off, I mean, thanks so much for having me. I love talking about the film, and this is a really cool platform too. So just thank you. And when my aunt said you guys went way back, I didn't realize elementary school. So yeah, thank you to the internet. um,
St. Dominic's class of 91.
wow.
Yeah,
I wasn't even born yet.
believe me, I know.
But yeah, I mean, it's super exciting to be screening in Chicago because I'm LA based these days because I just graduated from USC. But my hometown is obviously the Chicago suburbs. So I flew all my crew and some cast out from LA to make this film about my family. And I feel like the only place to make a film about your family is your hometown. And the film is semi-autobiographical, and it's basically just about my decision to kind of leave my giant Filipino American family behind to pursue this dream out in LA.
So in terms of making that decision, well, first of all, tell me why a short film instead of something that's feature length, because
Mhm.
it's such a great little story, told in about 25 minutes, but I could have watched, so what happens next. I won't spoil anything, because especially because it's a short movie, but
Yeah.
I felt like there was more material to be mined. So why not set your sights on a feature?
Yeah, well, actually, the feature is what we're making this year, 2 years later. And the reason why too is because mainly just money and time. It's a story I kind of had for a while, and the short film is a part of the feature length script that I wrote. It's kind of just the first 20 pages of the feature. Um, and I just graduated from USC. I don't have crazy connections walking into USC or coming out of USC to kind of just like make a huge feature right off the bat. And it's such a personal story too, and it's out of state for my crew, so it cost a ton of money to kind of make it there. And I also just want to be really careful telling the story too, just because it is so personal and like based off of real life events. So a short film, I feel like it's just kind of the best way to kind of you know get a glimpse of it out there to people who might be interested in like contributing to it. And then once it's out there and kind of makes its way around the world, then I can probably find more resources, which we have, to be able to turn it into a feature. And plus, we did a Kickstarter for the short film and raised around like a little over 15,000 for it. And like that's great for a short film, and you can make a feature with that. There's a lot of directors I look up to who made their first features for like 15, 20K, but we're trying to get like around 100 to 200,000 for the feature.
I was going to say those $15,000 like directors that you admire, were those like from a long time ago? Because I remember when that was like
Yeah,
kind
a
of a
long
big
time ago.
deal. Yeah.
Nowadays, I don't know if it is possible to make a. I mean, there are obviously ways, but definitely a lot harder. Um, yeah.
So you graduated from USC,
Mhm.
but when did you make this film?
I made this the same year I graduated. I graduated 2020 into the pandemic, and I didn't even get to finish my last semester in person. But yeah, so since a lot of us were graduating right into the pandemic, and like all my friends are film students too, we're kind of graduating into like a jobless world. So I just was able, I kind of saw it as a perfect opportunity to kind of rally all my friends, be like, hey, no one has jobs, and there aren't going to be jobs for us in the film world for like who knows how long. So why don't you guys just like read the script, tell me if you like it, and like we can all go make a movie with my family in Illinois.
So was that tough making it? Did you get in before the like all the crazy lockdowns and all that stuff, or were you filming kind of guerrilla style while this was going on? Because it looks like a pre-pandemic movie. There's
Yeah.
people without masks on. They're hugging, they're dancing around. There's crowd scenes.
Yeah, yeah. So I started pre-production like in March when everything started happening. Like everyone was so sad when like classes were canceled. We weren't going to get like graduation. And like instead of just being sad, I was like, I'm just going to focus on this one film to kind of get me through it. And there wasn't a lot figured out when we started pre-production in March, a lot of unknowns with COVID. But by the time we wanted to start shooting like in the summer, there were some regulations and some protocols at SAG and like DGA and all the guilds had released that can make filming possible. So we had many, many conversations about COVID safety before we flew everyone out to Illinois and kind of like, had a pod system of like who can you see while you're on set. And like obviously we're following protocols that SAG released, like they can only take their masks off after you call like rolling in action, and then a hand sanitizer between every take and all that good stuff, and like wiping. Before we even knew that code was completely just like airborne, like we were wiping down everything an actor touched. Like the whole art team would have to come in, and like there's the dollar store scene where they touch a ton of stuff.
Oh my God.
And
Yeah.
like the whole art department is like tracking everything they touch and then going in after I say cut to wipe down everything they touch, and then making sure the things that they touched in the dollar store are the same, so we don't have to sanitize those new things for each take. So just lots of track, lots to be careful with, but and lots of hesitation going into it too. But I'm just like, guys, like this is the only thing like getting me through the pandemic right now, so we're gonna make it.
Now, and telling such a personal story, I mean, just to kind of set it up, the movie is about Gabe, who has just graduated, and he's got a girlfriend named Nikki, and they're talking about essentially what's going to happen at the end of the summer. And he has an opportunity to go to film school out in LA. This is an Illinois-based story, as you mentioned. And Gabe is really torn because he's got a really close and very large family, and he is sort of the linchpin for the kids that all hang out together. I imagine because it's a short, we don't get into all the dynamics of like who's brother and sister, who's cousins. You just kind of get the feeling that it's a large blend of families in this little community of youngsters. And so it really is about him making that decision and also kind of keeping the secret from his family about what he intends to do. So you said this is semi-autobiographical. Was it easy for you to tell this story? Was there some catharsis in writing this script? Were you able to deal with some of the issues you may have faced when making that decision yourself? Or is this like a heightened version of what actually happened?
Yeah, kind of a mix, I feel like, of all the things you said. I feel like all of my filmmaking I've been making super personal stuff, and everyone's always like, oh, Cole tells super personal stories, I bet he loves talking about this stuff, and like like this is just what he loves to do. And actually like it's hard for me, the things I make movies about are kind of hard to talk about, so there's always some level of catharsis to it, and there's also some level of like a heightened version of what actually happened, because like I start showing it to producers and other people, and they're like, oh, like I know this is real life, Cole, but like it's just not exciting. So it's always, and I'm always careful, trying not to compromise like what's real to make something more exciting. But there are some things that you write and you add on just to make sure it like actually works as a movie. But no, a lot of it is real. It was a hard decision. For the Kickstarter too, I kind of tell what's real. For the Kickstarter video that we made to try to raise money, I kind of explain how it's real. And I just did actually grow up with my 20 cousins as like my best friends. Joy's kids, seeing them like every weekend and having these cousin sleepovers. So it was really hard to decide to move to California to kind of leave like basically like all your brothers and sisters behind. And my friends know too, I've made a ton of breakup films. And in a way, leaving behind my family is kind of like the biggest breakup film like I've set out to make. So yeah, and I think there's a lot of catharsis for my cousins too. Without spoiling things too, but like the grandma scene that you saw, we got one take of that because they were actually just bawling and like their parents were there, and like we got one take, and that's kind of why it's like uncut for so long too, in that wide shot.
Wow, that's a hell of a thing there, because that was your actors weren't the only ones who were bawling at that scene. Now you're extending this to feature length. Does that, I assume, imply that you're going to redo this as part of a feature? Is that the plan? So
yeah, so The feature started off very directly related to real life, but it's changed so much over 2 years, and even more so in just like the past few months as we've been kicking it into high gear. So it's kind of become its own thing and less autobiographical. Um, but I would love it to kind of start off with a truncated version of the short film to kind of establish what it's the whole family dynamic, but then it kind of just divulges into a whole new story in a way that's a little less autobiographical, but still very much so just coming of age and themes about having a giant Filipino American family and what it's like to leave that behind. So the themes and characters kind of stay the same, but it's really kind of taken on a life of its own the more I've rewritten it and talked to other team members and producers.
So looking at the movie from a filmmaker's perspective, you've probably seen it, hundreds of times. When you're thinking about doing a new version of it, are you thinking, now this is my opportunity to go and fix certain things I didn't like about, from the short, regardless of how it might change in the story? If you've got like, oh, I'm going to do this section shot for shot, but I'm going to tweak some things here because I've learned some stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if I could like edit something forever, I'd edit something forever. But I mean, at one point, you just got to put it out there and kind of be done with it. So they're all, no matter what I make, and no matter how much I like it or dislike it, there's always a million things I'm like, oh, I wish I did it this way. Um, but yeah, yeah, there's lots of things that would probably change. And then another huge thing too is the the feature is going to take place in college, um, and the main character taking a gap semester from college to kind of come back to their family, um, which is all new and why I said kind of takes on a whole new life of its own. But it's going to open up with that truncated version of everything stays to kind of establish the family that he's coming back to.
Um, it's it's the movie has, I mean, it's a drama, it's a short, kind of fictionalized piece as we've been discussing, but
Mhm.
there's so much montage, and that's not a criticism or a knock on it, because
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
very well done. It really establishes this family feel. Even the bits where everyone's kind of hanging out, you do get the feeling that these people weren't cast. They
yeah.
were just, chosen
And
to,
that's the best feeling you could. So spot on, nice.
so, but in some of those scenes, like with, there's the 4th of July with some, glow sticks and fireworks, and,
Mhm.
there's some dancing montages and things like that. Were those set up, or did you kind of take just home movies of like, you happen to be at a family event and say, hey, everyone, I'm gonna film this?
Yeah, so I have real home movies at the very end there. But the like actual montagey stuff that look like they're part of the film, we actually filmed during the summer to be part of the film. Um, but they weren't all completely scripted. There were a lot of scenes where I kind of just knew like, oh, there's going to be a scene in this forest preserve, or there will be this fireworks scene, and then like we brought some real actors over from LA and mixed them with my actual cousins. So it's a mix of like my actual family plus people like strangers.
Hmm.
And we had like about a week beforehand for them to kind of like hang out and really, build up a chemistry with my actual family. So then by the time I would just kind of set up the scene and let them do whatever, and it's all very handheld too. So my DP would just kind of guerrilla style handheld run around shooting all their shenanigans. And there's that one scene in the film at the ice cream shop.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of stands on its own outside of the montage, and that whole scene was unscripted, and it was actually just going to be in the montage, but we loved that moment so much that we took it out of the montage and made it a brand new scene on its own after the fact, once we were in post-production.
That, I think that's a pivotal scene, because again, without getting too much into it, it
Yeah.
shows the positives of a really close knit large family, but also what I'll call the insular kind of pettiness.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
There is a character who is sort of outcast in that scene, and
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
like, well, what was the big great crime? Oh, that's it. But you circle the wagons, and all of a sudden, it's like cold shoulder time.
yeah, yeah. And that was a thing too that like some of my producers were saying was missing a bit to see how, that one character didn't really fit in. And we found this scene in the montage, took it out, and we're like, oh wait, this is a great way to kind of show that and help her arc kind of come more make more sense by the end of it. Um, it's a fun part about editing too. Like I said, that was never in the script. It was an unscripted montage scene that was supposed to just be in the montage. But then like there's so many great clips and like ad libbed little moments in that ice cream scene. We're like, okay, this is gonna help our story, and we should take it out and make it its own thing. And
For
like I
sure.
love it, and like it's probably the scene that gets the most laughs and the most cringes in the theater when we screened it these days too. And it's nice to have some of that lightheartedness amidst like the heavier things towards the end.
Well, and the cool thing is even though it doesn't speak that well of the characters in the moment, you don't hold it against them. Like it's
Mhm.
not something that stays, through the rest of the film. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
that's not fair, but you kind of understand it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Tell me about this. What did you call it? Battle week, the week of preparation between your family and the actors. How did they get along? Was it awkward, or did everyone kind of fall into their kind of natural rhythms?
I think everyone kind of fell into their natural rhythms. I doubt myself a lot as a director and a writer all the time, just like normal imposter syndrome and stuff. I feel like one thing I do have a good sense of is just kind of picking the right people, and like I knew that these actors would love my family, and my family would love these actors, and it was pretty natural from the start. Um, and like we did a ton of games and fun stuff on Zoom beforehand too for like a whole month before they actually got to meet in person and spend time together. Like there's so many Zoom meetings we had where it's just all fun and games that I made up for the actors to meet the cousins. Like we played one game on Zoom where like just for the actors to see, I asked all my cousins to be like, okay, who's the most likely to like fall asleep on the floor at a cousin sleepover, and then they would all write it down and hold up their answers. And I thought that was a nice, easy way for the actors to kind of get to know the dynamic of the group and stuff like that. Or like who's the weirdest person to take out in public? All the cousins would write their answer, and it'd be so funny when they all pick the same person. But then the actors kind of got a sense of like who's who in this like giant family.
I want to ask you about film school and more to the
Yeah.
point, like coming out of film school, because especially coming into a pandemic, as you mentioned, a lot of folks, had some real hard times over these last couple of years, but
Yeah.
you seem to use it as a rallying factor, a motivation to say, I'm going to go make my art. I just spent God knows how much money on this education, and I'm not going to let a
Yeah.
little virus slow me down. So what do you attribute to that kind of fearlessness, that boldness to say, I'm going to make this movie?
Well, I mean, first off, thank you. Second, just backtracking to film school. I actually don't know if it was film school that kind of taught me that. I feel like a lot of the stuff I actually walked away with were the things I learned on sets outside of film school. I met a lot of really great professors and mentors in the film school, but I feel like um, I don't know where that comes from. I've never been asked that before, but I think my friends, and like I've been working with the same crew for years too. I
Okay.
feel like I've been slowly building up this dream team of like my go-to production designer, my go-to director of photography, my go-to editor. My editor has edited everything for the past 6 years now, and I've just been adding on to that team. And I feel like one thing that we all love and like that I love about them is like if any of us say we're going to do something, we can hop on to that train because we all know that we're actually going to stick to our word. Um, and I think all of my friends have that mentality too. So just when one of us say we're going to do something, if I say we're going to make this film, people aren't like hesitant to jump on because they're like, okay, we're actually going to make it. And I think, you know, keeping that feeling alive and around is really, I don't know, just fun and exciting and reliable.
And I
And get
imagine,
people coming back too.
well, I imagine that also holds you accountable, because you can't just idly throw out, I'm going to make this movie. Everyone says, I'm going to write this
Yeah.
book, and then nothing happens. But if you've got, people counting on you to say, hey, you said that we are going to be shooting something in 3 months. What's the deal?
Yeah. It definitely takes a while to get there too. I mean, I've made probably over a dozen short films by now with kind of the same people. Um, yeah.
So what makes this one different? I confess I have not seen your other work, but
Yeah.
I want to now because I'm so impressed by everything stays.
Well, thank
But
you.
how would you what sets this one apart from the other 11 movies, aside from it being the new one and possibly the most autobiographical, if that's the case?
Yeah, no, it definitely is the most autobiographical. Definitely what has been the heaviest lift so far because it is so personal. Um, I make a lot of breakup films that are kind of about relationships. Like I love Marriage Story and stuff, but I also love the most recent coming of age films that have come out, like Lady Bird and Moonlight and Waves. And this one is a much bigger scale than the other short films I think I did. I've kickstarted for a few other shorts before, but only needing like $2,000 to $5,000. So this is also one of the bigger budgets for a short film, because I think by the end of it, we had a total of like over $25,000 that we spent on this short film, which is a lot for a short film. 10 years ago, you could make a feature with that. So kind of, I think just kind of the scale, and also how dense it is with information. Because like a lot of the films I make and I admire are like super simple. And yeah, a lot of the films I made in the past are a lot simpler than this one. This one I had a lot of themes I wanted to explore and a lot more information I was trying to pack into 20 minutes. Trying to establish a family dynamic, like this girlfriend that he has, like how close he is with certain cousins and not others, and how bad he feels about leaving, and like a lot of information that I had to figure out how to pack into 20 minutes versus something that's kind of driven by just like one conflict and two characters like I've done in the past.
Now, as far as writing these characters, like you've got, was it a sister in the kind of the retail store?
Yeah, that was one of the cousins too.
One of the cousins. Okay, because that was a really powerful conversation, as was the scene between Gabe and Nikki in the car.
Mhm.
Very emotional scene. So when you're writing this, how much of what you put down makes it to the screen versus giving this to an actress
Yeah.
and saying how real does this feel to, perhaps would you say it this way, or am I just filtering it through my guy lens?
Yeah. So every time I work with a new actor too, it's always cool because they ask like, oh, how much can I go off the script? And because some actors work with directors who are like, it has to be word for word. Other actors work with directors who like don't even sometimes write dialogue and just say, here's the scenario, go for it. I definitely write all the dialogue that you hear that's on screen, but whenever an actor asks like how like closely do they have to stick to what's on the page, and I always tell them like, feel free to add whatever feels natural. Um, and it's funny too because the dollar store scene that you're talking about between Gabe and his cousin Sophia, never in it did I write that she cries there, and she cries in that scene, and I talked to the actress Harry afterwards, who's a really good friend of mine, like like how she got there, and she's just like, after spending a whole like month talking to your cousins and getting to know how close you actually are to them, and she's like, and seeing in action and in real time like how much they look up to you, she just felt that scene a lot more and just started crying there.
It's like
And like, I had never written in the script that she cried there.
it's like the positive side of method acting.
Yeah, exactly. And then she got to talk to my one cousin that it was based off of too, who was also really hurt by me leaving, and like I let them talk on their own time, like outside of me, like kind of facilitating a meeting. And there are a lot of things that she told her that like I didn't even know, but I found out after, where she's like, oh, she just really cared about you, and that's why she was so upset when you left. And like
Wow.
she kind of just knowing that, and she said she had that in the back of her head as she's saying these lines to someone being me really well. Ryan, who plays me, did phenomenal. She's like, it all just felt so real, and like she was a part of the family in that moment, and like the tears just came out naturally.
Wow.
So I always do let actors kind of do whatever feels right, but for the most part, what you hear on screen is what I wrote too.
Cool. So it's not necessarily what they're saying, it's what they're bringing to
Mm-hmm.
the words. That's cool.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you've spent some times on movie sets, throughout your studies and your career. Are
Mm-hmm.
these like big movies that you're like PAing on? Are they independent films or a mix of both?
It definitely a mix of both. I mean, I feel like there hasn't been any huge like blockbusters I've ever worked on, but I have had friends who've gone that route, where they start off as like the lowest PAs on these big sets, or like they're doing script coverage at like HBO or Paramount. But I feel like I've always kind of stuck with the indie films and the smaller companies, because I get a lot closer to them too. And like a lot of those smaller companies that I've stuck with, like Jubilee Media, they're one of the companies attached to the film as well, and their CEOs, their CEO and founder is also an executive producer on the film. And I started working there 5 years ago, and there were 4 full-time people and 200,000 subscribers that they had on YouTube. And now they have 7 million subscribers and
Wow.
40 full-time workers. And like they support everything I make, and I love them so much. And I think it's just because like I loved how small it was back then, and I just stuck with them ever since. I have friends who have also, benefited from working on the bigger sets and, doing script, starting off doing coverage and assistant work for these bigger companies. But yeah, I feel like all the work that I found throughout school was with the smaller indie directors that I've we're now like good friends, and like the smaller companies like Jubilee who are huge and support what I do, and I support whatever they do. Yeah.
That's great. Now, in terms of, having this community of people that you're working with and learning from who have fingers in all different kind of levels of the entertainment and film industry, are there any lessons that you're able to kind of learn either firsthand or secondhand about, how you want to map your career, how you want to treat people, how you want to be treated, any of these kinds of things? Because it doesn't
Yeah.
sound like you learned a whole lot of that in film school, but you're kind of getting a real world education.
Yeah, I mean, like I've been on sets where no one on the crew knows each other. They're just hired because of their talent, and like those have been my least favorite sets to be on. And everyone is just like so focused on the craft and making their paycheck. And I know for a fact that after being on a few of those, that's not what I want. And that's why I said I'm probably going to end up using the same people that I met in school and my friends for as long as I can. I do have a really successful roommate who's like making a first feature for Paramount already, but he has to go through a ton of hoops to get crew, and like a ton of the crew he's hiring to are like new people, and not our friends, which is a really exciting route too. But I think one thing I never want to lose is kind of being able to make things with my friends. And I think as long as I'm making things with the people I love, like I'm never gonna get tired of it. Because it's really easy to get tired on a 12-hour day when you don't know anybody on set and everyone's just like, I'm just gonna be with my camera. Don't talk to me. Yeah.
Now, speaking of those kinds of relationships, I assume your family has watched the movie.
Mhm.
What do they think of Everything Stays?
It's funny. I think we've screened it at almost a dozen festivals so far, and I've been to like maybe half of them. So I get a bunch of different crowd reactions and like applause and tears and laughter at different parts. But before all of the festival screenings, I wanted to make sure my family saw it first. So I flew back to Illinois to screen it for them. And as soon as it cut to black and like the title comes up and like credits come up and then it ends, it was just silent. There were a lot of tears throughout, but then at the end it was just silent. But I mean, everyone loved it. It's just a lot for them to take it. As much as I put myself into it, as much as it took a toll on me to make, like by the end of it, I think the silence was just them taking it all in for a second, being like, wow, like this is actually us, and this is kind of what we went through together. But they loved it, and I'm really happy that they appreciate it too. And
Did
they're
they?
always asking. I haven't put it out to the world yet, just because it's still going through festivals and stuff like that, so I can't put it out there. So once a month, one of them or a family asks for a link to rewatch it.
So, you had mentioned that your cousin and the actress who played her kind of had a side conversation and gave some insight that got back to you that you didn't know.
Mhm.
Was there anything like that? Any reaction from your family, like they didn't understand kind of what you were going through until they saw this film, or
Yeah.
did they have any reactions that perhaps if you had known what they were thinking or going through while you were making that decision, it would have made things any different in real life?
Yeah, I mean, all of that's very accurate. There are a lot of I feel like a lot of them didn't even know I was going through with my girlfriend at the time, because I remember when I was like getting ready to leave to go to LA, like I was spending a lot more time with my girlfriend, and like conversations I had with my cousins were like, Cole, you're spending more time with this girl you met this year than your cousins who've been your best friends for like your whole life. Like, how could you do this to us? Kind of things. And then there are things like my parents didn't know were going on either. Um, but I mean, at the end, and what I kind of wanted to show at the end of the script too is like it's all just out of love, all the pain that we went through together and maybe caused each other. I think it's all just coming from a place of like this fear of like it breaking apart and just not wanting to lose what we all really love. Um, and I think that's what they were able to take away from it too, which is a good thing. um,
Definitely.
yeah. And then the writing the script too is just like how do I balance the sad stuff with like hopefulness and like making sure everyone knows that like it's coming from a place of love. And I feel like if I actually made this script years ago, like when I first left, it would feel different, because I think I was kind of upset too leaving that things had to end that way. But for making it 4 or 5 years later, nowadays I just miss them and all the things we used to have. So directing it with a different feeling than I would have like 5 years ago.
That's a pro tip for getting older. Perspective
Yep.
becomes your best
Yep.
friend.
And yep, time.
Yeah. So the movie is it's going to be at the Siskel Center as part of the Asian American Shorts programming theme of resilience. So have you seen the other films on the lineup? Have you met any of the other filmmakers? Because you're going to be actually in Chicago on
Yeah.
Saturday to
Yeah. Yeah.
present the movie.
Yeah. I've seen maybe like half the films because it's screened at a bunch of other Asian film festivals. It's been in the festival run for like a year now, a long time. This is probably going to be the end because I just want to get it out to the world at this point. But like Carol Nguyen, I haven't met her yet, but I love her film, No Crying at the Dinner Table. I watched it online, and I think we've been in a couple of festivals together, but I've never had the chance to meet her. I don't think she's going to be there either because I think she's Canadian. But it's cool to be on this journey with other Asian filmmakers throughout the year without ever really getting to meet them, of being like, oh, there's their film again. So cool.
So what is it about like like the kind of the phrase Asian American filmmaker that like sets you and that and your community
Mhm.
sort of apart, like establishes a voice for the kinds of films that you make, the themes? Like what is special about that to you?
Um, I think right now is a really special time for Asian American filmmakers because there are a lot of people paving an easier way for us to kind of tell our stories, like Wu Wong with The Farewell that did really well at Sundance, Crazy Rich Asians, obviously. So I feel like kind of again, like 5 years ago, maybe it wasn't the time, like no one would want to watch our stuff, but I feel like right now is a really great time where people do want to see more of our stories, and there is a bigger audience that we're able to reach finally. Um, and there's so many people telling like immigrant stories and like the struggles of being Asian American. And I feel like one thing that maybe I'm able to add is like I didn't grow up super Asian American. I grew up very American in the Chicago suburbs, as you probably know if you're from the Chicago suburbs. Um, so I feel like the stories that I like to tell are kind of just like Asians being American and kind of just like living this life, not different. It doesn't have to always be, not every Asian American film has to be how we're different or how we've struggled differently. I think everything Says to is kind of just like a normal coming of age, an American coming of age story with Asian characters. So a lot of the films I've been able to resonate to with recently are not Asian American films, but I'm like, oh my god, I've been there with my parents or I've been there with my family, but none of those people look like me. So hopefully, what I can add is like stories that other Asian Americans like me can relate to and like finally see themselves.
That's cool. I want to close with a question that bugged the hell out of me while I was watching the film, in a good way.
Yeah.
The 4th of July fireworks scene. Did you set up your own fireworks on that lake, or was that just a July 4th and you're like, okay, this is our golden hour, we're going to get out here and make this scene from the movie?
Yes, I love those questions because I'm so proud of how the fireworks look on camera. So I love it when someone asks, "How did you get those fireworks?" Because fireworks always look so fake in movies. And so we principal photography for the short film was August. That's when they flew out the cast from LA and the crew. But I wrote this 4th of July fireworks scene from the beginning. So we were trying to find ways to get fireworks in August. And we even talked to like Naperville City Council for some like pointers. They gave us some contacts, and the contacts like, oh yeah, like our starting price is like 20,000, and it kind of goes up from there based off of what you want. We're like, okay, so we're not gonna make fireworks in August. So we went through city council again, and instead like just were able to rope off a small section for the Naperville fireworks show on the 4th of July. So I knew there was gonna be Nikki and Gabe and Sophia, who are being played by real actors, who won't be out until August. So I just got some body doubles for them and just focused on shooting the fireworks on the 4th of July of my cousins and the body doubles on the 4th of July. Get those real fireworks, get the backs of their heads. And then in August, we went back to the same spot and just put up some lights that changed colors a ton that my DP programmed and picked out, and focused on just shooting their faces. So then when it's intercut, it looks all the same.
That's the magic of movie making. You didn't do anything digitally. It's all
Yep, it's all
practical and
real. And
tricky of
everyone's like,
lights and
wow, the
editing.
budget must have been huge to get all of those fireworks just for like a private show of his cousins. I'm like, yeah. Yep, we did spend that much. No, but yeah.
Now, I did not I didn't notice the body doubles, but now I have to go back and watch the film again, see if I spot it.
Yeah.
Do you notice it? Is there anything like, God, I hope no one
Of
is
course
paying
I noticed
attention?
it, but no one will ever notice it. And then like we stole the shirts from the body doubles too for the actors in August, just to make sure it looks the same. And like, Sarah, who plays Sophia, her body double had a low ponytail, and at one point Sarah had her hair in a high ponytail. I'm like, wait, let's just we got to make sure it's all the same.
Excellent. Well, so is the feature the next thing you're working on? Are you going to put another short together in the meantime, or what are your future plans?
Yeah. Well, after we made the film, actually, I started a small production company because so many people on my crew I know have great scripts that they're just sitting on because they're just afraid to make it. So I was like, guys, like, let's just make all of your ideas together next year. So last year, 2021, we made like 10 short films all on the same scale. I didn't direct all of them. My friends who had the scripts directed them. I kind of just like gave them the push to make it. And we established this company together to like kind of encourage everyone to just band together and make them. And everyone else did Kickstarters. All of them raised like 10 to like one raised $45,000 just for these short films. We made all 10 last year. We all burned up by November and hated our lives. We all took a nice break in December and January. And so currently we're just working on finishing those and getting those out there. And while that's all happening, I'm focusing on my feature, but we're sticking with the company all together, making things.
And just for the record, you're like 26 years old, right?
24.
20, I don't know if that makes it worse or better. You're like you're like the Renaissance, like the zoetrope Renaissance with Coppola and Spielberg and all those guys.
I don't know. Still lots I'm learning and figuring out, but it's fun. It's all fun, and I mean, while I'm with these people, I'm loving what I'm doing. So
excellent. Well, congratulations on the film. I think coming back to Chicago for a nice homecoming at the Siskel Center is very exciting. It's part of the Asian American Shorts Resilience Showcase this Saturday at 3 p.m. I'll have all the information down below so people can check out the links. But I want to know, where can people follow you and keep up on your stuff?
Yeah, I think I post pretty much everything on my Instagram, which is just CABACANI, CA Bacani. Everywhere, Twitter and Instagram. You can keep up with me there. Yeah.
Do you have a production company website or anything?
Not yet. So we're planning on finishing up all these films by May, hosting a huge screening for all of them in June, and just invite everyone who's donated, because everyone has brought in their own resources and people from other connections. And we'll screen all 10 for everybody in one space and kind of like publicly launch our company and say, this is what we made in a year. That's the goal. That's the goal. We're working on it.
Well, it's not a goal, because I mean, a goal you can fall short of a goal. You sound like the kind of guy, like it's going to happen. It's already done. It has happened. We just haven't seen it yet.
Exactly.
All right, cool. Well, again, congratulations. Thanks so much for taking some time to talk with me and for making this film and sharing it. It was really special, and I enjoyed the hell of it. I think a lot of other people will once they discover it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gene. This is great. Love the conversation too. So thanks for having me.
All right, you're welcome. Take care, and I look forward to seeing the next thing.
Yep.
All right. See you, man. Take care. Thanks.